Hello, everybody. At this time, I'll be sharing with you the upcoming Sunday School lesson for the first Sunday of October. It is called The Birth of Moses, coming from Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. The lesson may be very familiar to you. You probably heard it taught to you when you were a child going to Sunday school about the birth of baby Moses. But we should never get tired of hearing it again, as it is a great and wonderful story. Let me begin by recommending you read chapter 1, Exodus chapter 1. But if you don't, I'll give you a few highlights. The sons of Israel, who is also better known as as Jacob. The sons of Israel, Jacob, are living in Egypt. I think they would live there for a long time. The third son of Jacob, also called Israel, is Levi. And Moses' parents would come from the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi would later be led by Aaron, Moses' brother, and the Levites would be the priesthood, the priestly tribe. We even find the Levites in the New Testament, as they are still actively involved in the Jewish priesthood. In Jesus' parable of the great or good Samaritan, one of those who did not help the man who had been beaten and left for dead was a Levite. The Levite passed him by. A new king or Pharaoh had come to power in Egypt. He did not feel or act kindly to the Hebrews living in Egypt's land. He thought they were having too many babies, were becoming too powerful, and he sought to punish them. He subjected them to harsh slavery, making them work the crops and the quarries where the bricks or stone were mined. But not just mining, also making bricks virtually from scratch. Then he ordered that when the Hebrew women birthed baby boys, these baby boys were to be killed. In verse 22, we have this command from Pharaoh, quote, "You must throw every son born to the Hebrews into the Nile River, but let every daughter live." Pharaoh was commanding that the Hebrew baby boys be drowned. But the Hebrew midwives, the ones who would deliver the babies, at least most of them refused to obey the Pharaoh's order. They believed in the sanctity of human life. This is the foundation for chapter 2. The other part to this story that is not found in chapter 2 is the name of Moses' parents. We find that information actually in chapter 6, which includes the genealogy of Moses and Aaron. Chapter 6, verse 20 reads, Amram married his father's sister, Jochebed, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. Amram lived 137 years. Now, it was not unusual for people to marry within their own tribe or their own family. The other significant verse is verse 23. Quote, Aaron's son Eleazar married one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the Levite families by their clans. Now on to chapter 2. Jochebed gives birth to her third child, a baby boy, whom she said was beautiful. She had been trying to figure out a way to avoid Pharaoh's decree that would result in death to her now 3-month-old son. While the text does not say so, it seems likely that she had been observing Pharaoh's daughter. Maybe she had heard from the Hebrew midwives that Pharaoh's daughter loved children. Maybe she was unable to have children of her own. And Jochebed and her daughter Miriam seemed to know Pharaoh's daughter's habits and knew she would appear by the water, the Nile. You know, back in those days, everything happened in the river, personal bathing, washing clothes, everything. And so Pharaoh's daughter would be within throwing distance. Therefore, Jochebed constructed a waterproof basket guaranteed not to sink. In the Hebrew language, the word for this basket was actually little ark like Noah's ark, which was waterproof. Now, this would have been a very, very tiny little ark. On this day, the baby boy was placed in the Nile, and Pharaoh's daughter saw the basket, and she would hear the baby boy crying. And she had one of her servant girls go over to fetch the basket, and when she saw the innocent, beautiful boy, her heart tugged. On cue, Miriam called out, asking Pharaoh's daughter, did she need a nurse, a woman to nurse the boy? And of course she did, because every 3-month-old back in those days needed their mother to nurse the child. Again on cue, Jochebed comes over as the nursing woman, which allowed her to nurse her own child until he was of age, and she even got paid for that service. We will never know if Pharaoh's daughter knew that Jochebed was the biological mother. My personal guess is that she did, but this all worked out according to God's wonderful plan. It would be Pharaoh's daughter that named Moses, which means drawn out of, Moses, the son, drawn out of the Nile River. The lesson writer conjectures that Jochebed may have continued to be involved in the life of Moses beyond nursing, since Moses seemed to have grasped an understanding of his Hebrew lineage. Let me talk with you about 3 principles that operated in the life of baby Moses, particularly in chapter 2. One is God's timing. Even though the odds seemed to be stacked against Moses living, God provided the right people at the right time, Jochebed, Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter. They took a great risk, but God timed it out perfectly. On page 33 in the Learner's Guide, the lesson writer shares a personal story about how God provided them their dream home. It seemed like a shot in the dark kind of chance, but God worked it out for them perfectly. I expect that you have also seen God work things out for you in matters that seem very unlikely or even impossible, your words, not God's, because with God, all things are possible. The second principle is about the sanctity of human life. For too many people, human life, particularly that of the very youngest of the young and the oldest of the old, is disposable. They see the baby in the womb as a burden. They see the old and infirmed as a burden. For Christians, all life is sacred. In the life of Moses, the forces for giving and preserving life won out. Even though there was no strong sanctity of human life belief evident in the Egyptian culture. The third is the big picture for Moses. When we give birth to a child and raise that child, we do so with the belief that God is going to do something special and even great. We don't know exactly how or when, but we believe. It is faith. Jochebed birthed a beautiful child. Pharaoh's daughter took in a beautiful child to raise as her own. We might call this adoption. God's hand was always on Moses, and Moses was indeed destined for greatness. God had a big picture for Moses, just as God has a big picture for you and for me. God bless. Have a great week. Hope to see you Sunday, if not before.